It started back in 2003, 2004. And the company I was working for at the time was world's biggest contract operating company for water wastewater plants. And a close friend of mine there was had become the director of asset management for the West. And he basically told me that, what we were as a company going to start doing. And to me, I looked at this as, well, this kind of sounds like common sense, because how we always have to prioritize. We always have to do things a certain way within families, and that's not. Anyways, and so, he was describing it to me, and he said, hey, you want to start getting into this thing. There's this thing called asset management. And we went into the, the International Infrastructure Book on Maintenance from Australia. Forgot the name of it right now since I'm on video, but basically the Asset Management Bible at the time. And I looked at this and thought, wow, this is, pretty heavy, but there's some really, really good stuff in here. And something that helps you put a structure around and guide what you should be doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, especially if you're looking after critical infrastructure. And so as time goes by, I got more up to speed on it, got sort of a little bit of drinking from the fire hose on this thing, and realized that back in 2004, 2005, I had gone and started an engineering company that nobody was speaking the same language, that maybe it was a little bit early for the North American market, and that things that were from outside our borders really didn't sort of, count. So in the meantime, I then went back and did some more things for the company I used to work for and ran their business in the West, and got really integrated with and intimate and understanding with what was going on with the asset management group within that company. And I brought them into several of my projects because I knew that they were not only really good people, but the results were going to be really valuable in bringing a return on investment, helping us make those, I like that there's a couple of things that just my favorite things about, call it the official asset management tome, ISO 55000. But the idea of making risk-based decisions and the idea of alignment. And those were two parameters that from a business context, from working in a for-profit company within a municipal organizations, but for-profit, there was something about that really resonated, because I thought, no, this is a merging of business values and focus with critical infrastructure, which we're all affected by. And so I thought this was just a great marriage between the two. So when I left the company again, I had a couple of options, and one of which was to consider taking over this company, Uberlytics, which focuses in the areas of asset management on a particular tactical aspect of it, but that really sort of delivers a core element of it, albeit from a tactical perspective, it's a very strategically placed, call it a set of exercises and solution. And ever since then, I've basically, been full-time since 2013, helping organizations avoid making decisions that undermine their future success. I'll put it that way.
That's good.
So that's a little bit of the origin story. So we're at a conference, go figure. And we're at a maintenance conference for a term. And there's this dude that all of a sudden saddles up to Jenny and I, and he's got a mustache on, and he saddles up and he starts telling us about this organization that he's a part of, and he describes it as the Asset Leadership Network. And we sort of try to figure out, what's it really about, and is it, this and this and that, and we sort of have some discussions back and forth, and then we realize that this is probably something pretty good, because it's very tied into the ISO publications, and very much, all of a sudden we realize, very much involved with the creation of the ISO documents, and ISO 55000 documents to be specific. And this guy, who shall remain nameless for a couple more minutes, happened to be involved in the creation of the standard, or a portion thereof, and be heading up this Asset Leadership Network. So we just thought, what, this sounds like a really good thing to be a part of, with the charter of promoting the standard, as well as helping, I'm going to call it this way, helping publicly funded critical infrastructure stewards do a better job at what they're tasked to do. So public money basically being more effectively used. Well, that resonates with me. So we said, okay, you know what, let's see what we can do. And so we started showing up at some of the conferences, realized that we had a bit of a voice, thought we had something of value to offer, and made some very good friends, were introduced to some unbelievably amazing people. And, you know, Jim, we have you to thank for that meeting around the bar where you first introduced us to the Asset Leadership Network, and didn't really have a clue at the beginning what it was, but it is what it is now, and it's just excellent. So, but I will say that, you know, the part that jazzes me is taking something that is a standard, which is a template or is a standard for what a company needs to put in place strategically and overall for governance, and then saying, okay, well, the guys in the field are going to be doing some stuff, and how do you tie the two together? And that's the part that I love doing, is saying, okay, these are the things that corporately speaking we are governed by, and standards and policies and that sort of stuff. Well, how do you translate that to what's actually going to make you money on a daily basis, and to keep the guys safe, and to make sure that they're working on the right stuff and they're not wasting money, they're making risk-based decisions, and that you get this alignment, you know, the line of sight. And that's the part that not only do we focus on, it's the part that I love doing, because that's where there's that return on investment for putting something like that in place that actually directly affects how the folks on a day-to-day basis do their job. And actually, the way I view it is exercise stewardship over, on a municipal or public sector, over critical assets, a critical infrastructure. And even from a corporate perspective, that they're looking after the assets that are there to provide some service, whatever it ends up being, or some product that happens to keep everybody employed, right? It helps generate economy. So from that perspective, I look at that going, that's a much more efficient use of capital. So there's a big dollar component that I think people too often miss. They just think, oh, it's another standard and it's just going to create paperwork for me. No. There's rhyme and reason for why it is the way it is. Like everything else, it can be, you know, things can be improved on. It was pretty good as it is. But making that connection, super important. Well, I've got one that's kind of one of my favorite ones, because it touches on a number of aspects within the standard. And I kind of distill the standard down. When I talk about it, I sort of distill it down into sort of 4 essential pillars. And the way I word it, the 2 pillars that I talk about more, apart from executive support, senior support, but is 2 of the other 3, and that is alignment and making those risk-based decisions. And so we were at a particular client, which is a relatively large concern up in the Midwest, and they're a regional facility. And I'll keep their name out of it, you know, for now. But they, I'm sorry? You just asked me what their name was?
I don't think it matters.
Well, okay.
Depending on what you're going to say, of course.
Metropolitan Council. It's a city. It's up in St. Paul, and it's a large 250 million gallon a day regional treatment plant with a whole host of, I think, 9 other smaller satellite plants. And just a wonderful group of people who are really serious about adopting asset management. And they're actually wanting to use asset management as a common language between the different divisions, and different, I should say, functional groups within, so engineering and operations and maintenance and this and that. And I'm not giving anything away that, you know, isn't publicly been already done in a presentation somewhere by some members of that staff. Anyway, so we go and do our thing, and we help them, and particularly with driving towards making those risk-based decisions and aligning what they would need to deal with on a daily basis with what corporate wants and what corporate's really about. So, you know, we do the exercise where we understand the values of an organization, and we understand the criteria that they think are important. We help them scale it. You know, we're not telling them what to do. We're just guiding them through this and helping them get to a refined, very sharply focused set of metrics that they can work with. And so then we do the analysis, literally on 100% of, near 100% of their assets, including some huge fluidized bed reactors. And the really cool part was, is at the end we said, okay, well, here are all the results. Here's what, actually is you guys deemed as priorities based on a number of factors, from everything from health and safety to whatever. And we said, well, let's take a look at a back of envelope calculations. And one guy who's another real sharp guy up there, he says, well, you know what, I'm going to compare these results to what we did, years ago. And we looked at it and said, oh, doesn't look too different. When you look beneath the surface, there was a massive degree of variability. Like things jumped from high critical to low critical and low critical to high. And so, if you're making decisions on your assets and systems, if you think something's high critical and it isn't, you just wasted your money. So we looked at this and we saw, you know what, there is at least 70% of the assets did a major jump in rankings. And back of the envelope calculations, we came up with about 20% savings out of their maintenance budget and about 20% retargeting. In other words, there were things that were happening that didn't need to happen, that were ripe for a serious review on, is this the right thing to do with those particular assets? So again, it's tactical what we came up with, but at the end of the day, strategy kind of has to work its way down to the tactical part, because it's the tactical part that looks after a sewage plant. It's a tactical part that makes water, that's so that we can drink it and that we don't end up having cholera. It's a tactical part that looks after the roads, that makes sure that they get plowed or salted or whatever the solution is, dealing with the potholes. But it's how you get there, how you prioritize. What's the bucket of money that, how much of that bucket of money are you going to be allowed to spend on stuff, and making sure that what you're spending it on is really putting that, your level of service, your organizational calling at risk. And so it was an extremely satisfying exercise. We did it not twice on the same thing, but we came back and they asked us to do some more. And then the other part, which is just really it's kind of like, you like to educate and you like to pass things on. The great part is they were able to adopt it, internalize it, and now they're carrying on their own. And so they've basically, it's not somebody from the outside saying, this is what you need to do. They've basically absorbed it. It's become part of their DNA. And they now are down that journey, step by step, improving how they do things in a language of asset management to communicate between divisions. And the division part of it. So there was a huge degree of agreement, at the end with what needs to be done. We've got, last year, I brought one of the former bosses of mine, colleagues of mine, and it's a kind of a funny world. We flip-flop back and forth on who's doing work for who. But we brought him along, and I think Jim had a really good perspective on how local governments particularly work. Sorry, I'm just getting a notification here. So there is stuff happening as far as legislation. There is stuff like on a state level and a local level. I mean, one of the things that we've got, and we're thinking about bringing one of our customers along for the journey, is a water authority that decided a couple of years ago to embark on this journey of being more intentional about asset management and moving in that direction. One of the things that I think is important to recognize is that, a lot of times we end up featuring folks that have crossed the finish line, or at least they've achieved a certification or something, an extremely significant and tall order or milestone. And sometimes that can seem intimidating. So some discussions we have and some thoughts we have about bringing folks along that are just starting their journey. And as a note of encouragement that, the best time to start it was, maybe 10 years ago. The second best time is now, right? And if you're going to do anything, just take baby steps on what you can actually bite off, what you can get approval for, and do some proof text for it and see what comes of it. So, water, wastewater, similar field to choose from, shall we say. If you're running water plants, running wastewater plants, or you're running both, you're picking from a very similar administrative so if you have a water plant, you're pretty well also talking about wastewater plant, vice versa in terms of the municipal needs and the local economy and the local impact. And Jim and I think are proud parents, so to speak, of helping Raytheon get across the line on that one. And sitting through an audit, it's always an experience. And I had heard from Jim through his experience, having sat through many audits, what possibly to expect. And I'm sorry, it's kind of like having children. You never know what you're going to get until you end up getting there. So people can warn you about it, but you cannot imagine it. So no, I think, overall, especially if clients have got their heads on and they're intentional and serious about it, it can be extremely rewarding and leveraging what they've done already. I don't know, Jim, how do you feel about it? I mean, I loved working with you. I learned a lot from you in doing that one. I think it's something that we can really be proud of. I mean, Raytheon's not a fly-by-night organization.
Yeah. Well, I think, if the organization's doing it the right way for the right reasons, then it's all a positive process. If there's audit findings, it means there's something that we overlooked or we have a disagreement about what's important. But if you're trying to just, paper whip it and get a certificate, well, first, I don't think that's anything Tacoma and I would get involved in, but that can cause audit problems for sure.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
I think there's something. It was a really important lesson that I got out of it that I know will take to anybody that we have discussions with who are interested in this kind of area, and that is be careful how much you bite off. If you're going to chew off a big chunk of your organization, I think it's almost a exponential or even a logarithmic increase in surface area where you're going to have to make sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And that could become an expensive and difficult exercise. I think if you haven't sat through it, pick something small, something reasonable, go through that, learn from that, and take those learnings for the next one where you can bite off maybe a little bit more. I don't know, Jim, you agree, disagree, or?
Yeah, I think the best end state is to have a system that covers everything, all your assets.
Of course.
But you're absolutely right. To try to, eat the whole apple tree, probably not a good idea.
No. Well, and it's because it's also new for customers, and there's a new standard, and it's not a task that is small. It takes resources and it takes commitment, and so biting off a manageable chunk, I think, is always a good idea, and then take that, and then the amount of effort to go the next step, I think, is significantly reduced with all the learning.